Innovation, imagination, wonder. These are just some of the words used to describe Dr. Harvey Passes. Dr. Passes explores interesting people and ideas that will stimulate you. He questions the people who develop, create, and employ novel concepts in business and everyday lives. He especially loves to speak with successful people. How did they do it? How can you do it too? So let's join Dr. Harvey Passes in his quest of wonder and curiosity as we watch Dr. Harvey Passes Presents.
I was very fortunate at a meeting a few weeks ago. I met an individual who impressed me with his skill, his knowledge, his expert information that he provided. And it was about something that was very important. And by the end of the conversation, I realized that I had learned so much that I said, how would you like to do this same thing on television? And he said to me, what are you talking about? And then I explained to him about my show, and he says, wow, that would be great. I'd love to give this information to more people. So I am fortunate to have Steve Razor come down here. And not only is he sharp-minded and he's sharp-witted, even with that sharp name, he is an individual who's an attorney. He's an elder care attorney, and he's got fabulous things to share with you. This is another one of those shows that you can get a pencil and paper because you're going to need to take notes. You're going to learn a lot about yourself, or for a loved one, for your mother, for your father, for aunt, your uncle. There's a lot of good stuff here. So let's begin. Steve.
Let's do that.
Great. Thanks very much for coming down. Let me tell the folks at home a little bit about your background so they can appreciate where you come from and your information and your knowledge. Now, you're a founding partner in a firm called Razor and Kenneth, and your area of practice includes elder law, estate planning, administration, criminal defense, criminal and civil litigation. But today, we're going to be talking about elder care. You served as an assistant district attorney, where you successfully prosecuted hundreds of misdemeanor and felony criminal cases while at the same time serving, I love this, as a judge advocate general in the United States Army National Guard. Very cool.
That's correct.
You're a commissioned officer in the Army National Guard's Judge Advocate General's Corps, and you volunteered for active service, active duty in Iraq. And, I'm going to go into this for a second. You served with the troops as a legal assistance attorney for the Office of the Staff Judge Advocate, where you assisted in estate planning and other financial administrative issues while you defended soldiers from actions instituted by the federal government, serving as a victim liaison. In recognition for your service in Iraq, I like that, you earned the Global War on Terrorism Expeditionary Medal for meritorious service in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom, and the Army Commendation Medal for exceptional meritorious service during combat operations. That is really cool, Steve. And you received the New York State Bar Association's Award for Excellence in Public Service, and that was presented with our own state's flag by Senate Majority Leader Joseph Bruno. Very nice. Very, very, very cool. So you're, well, we can go on and on about this. It almost becomes an obituary, so we're not going to do that. Let's go right into the information about what you've got. First, what is elder law? Is that an area, specific, a specialty of the law? Talk about it.
Sure. Elder law is basically trusts and estates, adding in Medicaid planning. It's specifically tailored for the elderly.
We're going to get into this with Medicaid planning. Well, maybe we should right now. Why did you throw that in? What is the big deal about Medicaid planning? Is this an important issue?
Well, it's a very important issue.
Why?
Considering the fact that long-term care in a nursing home is very expensive.
Like what kind of, what numbers on the average you're talking about?
Well, if looking at Long Island, as most of our viewers would be,
right.
It's about $10,000 a month for care.
$10,000 a month?
Right. And that becomes very prohibitive, obviously, for middle-class people, not just for the poor.
Mm-hmm.
So what I usually tell people when they think about Medicaid planning, everybody usually realizes that it's for the poor. So Medicaid is for the poor, but it's also for the middle class that will become impoverished because of the high cost of nursing home care.
Absolutely, $10,000 a month. I mean, you have to have an awful lot of shekels to be able to afford that and not feel that that you're not poor, because that will make you poor.
Exactly, absolutely.
Okay, so Medicaid, not Medicare.
Right.
Medicaid. Medicaid basically does what? What services does Medicaid provide?
Well, Medicaid will pay for your nursing home care, as opposed to Medicare. Medicare will pay, but only up to 100 days. Only
Oh, I
1
didn't know
through
that.
20, 100%. After that, there's certain qualifications to get to that 100-day mark.
1 through 20,
Medicare.
will pay for 100%.
Right.
After day 20, 21,
Right.
does Medicaid kick in?
Now, at that point, there'll be an 80% disbursement
Of
from
Medicare.
Right.
Right.
But the 20% you can get covered by secondary insurance.
I see. That's your long-term care
No,
insurance?
that's secondary insurance you might have through other sources. Long-term care insurance
It's a totally different animal.
Yeah, totally
Okay,
different
we're
animal.
going to get into that because if I'm asking these questions,
Right.
other people are asking these questions.
Absolutely. I'm
You
glad
know,
to hear them.
You know, they want to know that. Okay, so basically what I'm saying is you don't just work with the impoverished, you work with middle-class people
Absolutely.
to help them plan for
Right.
this kind of a problem.
There's one group that Medicaid is not for, and that's for the wealthy.
The wealthy.
Right.
Now, I wasn't going to ask you this, but I'm going to. What defines wealthy?
Well, it's obviously a certain amount of assets.
Okay. Is there a magic number?
There's no magic number.
So
No.
what's wealthy?
Well, wealthy would be normally considered anybody with net value of over $2 million. Now, nowadays, that's not a whole lot of money. Most people wouldn't consider $2 million to be an extraordinary amount.
Isn't that disgusting?
Well, it's true, though, because if you look at the cost of housing nowadays,
Right.
an average home on Long Island can easily run you $500,000.
Oh, easily.
And if you don't have a mortgage on that home, well, then you have a worth right there just in your home of $500,000.
Okay, so okay, we're going to get knee deep into things and just have a little bit of patience because I'm going to be asking you stuff that you obviously know all the answers to, and we got to work our way through this circuitous thing that we're getting involved in here.
I enjoy
Okay.
every minute of it. So far.
I can't believe you enjoy. Anyway, all right. Well, look, I like doing root canal. Okay, so let's begin. Nursing home. What are the different ways that can be? You alluded to it earlier. What are the different ways that nursing home can be paid for? One through your pocket.
One through your pocket, exactly.
Go ahead.
That's the one way. The other way is through long-term care insurance, and the other way is Medicaid. There's 3 ways. That's it.
Okay, and that's it.
That's it.
Okay. Is private pay similar to long care term insurance, or they're separate entities?
They're totally separate entities.
Explain.
One simply means private pay is that you're paying out of your pocket, so you don't have insurance of any kind, whether it be Medicaid or long-term care insurance. So that's just if somebody goes into a nursing home and they're simply emptying out their checking account to pay for the bills. That's the difference between private pay and long-term care insurance. Long-term care insurance is similar to taking out a life insurance policy. Now, if you would go and get an estimate as to how much that will cost you, you'll make a determination as to whether or not that's in your best interest to get. That's an alternative, and it's a good one. You could get long-term care insurance that will cover your entire stay in the nursing home. You can also get long-term care insurance that will cover a portion of it. The better the coverage, the higher the premium. And for some people, the premiums are too high to afford, and that's where Medicaid really comes in.
When should an individual look for long-term care insurance? I mean, when they're 30, when they're 40, when they're 50, when they're 80? I'm sure the premiums have to change.
Absolutely, they change.
Explain.
And they get higher, of course, as you get older. And as your physical condition changes, the premiums are going to get higher.
I want to clarify this.
Right.
Are you saying that if you were to purchase it when you're 55 years old, and you're not going to need it till you're 85 years old?
Right.
Okay. Does that mean the price stays the same as it is when you're 55? Or let's say you went to purchase it when you're 80. Is the premium the same as if an individual were to purchase that same premium at 55? Or because you're older, the premium is higher?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The premium is going to be higher the older that you are, because obviously they're going to catch up some of that income that you're paying into the system if you get it at 55. So you're going to get a lower premium at that time.
And is the number going to stay the same? In other words, if I do it at 55, and I have this thing now, I'm 83, and all of a sudden I'm drooling and I've got to go into the nursing home.
Okay.
And I'm finished. I got to go into the nursing home.
Right.
So I've had this policy now for like 25 years, 28 years. Does the premium stay the same for all those years? Or does it increase?
It will increase, but you can get inflation riders. I mean, as specific as you want to get it, and the best kind of coverage you want to get, you can get. It's going to cost you. It'll cost you more in a premium, but there are certain mechanisms that you can build into a policy that protect you from the premiums going up too high.
I see. So now, one listening to this is saying, okay, Medicaid's looking pretty good to me, and how do you qualify for Medicaid? There's got to be various factors. What are those?
Well, just to overlap the two issues together, we're just talking about long-term care insurance. There is the New York State Partnership Plan as well,
is that?
Which basically means it's a specific plan that you could pay into, and that if you utilize 3 years of nursing home care, then Medicaid will automatically kick in regardless of your assets. Now that's another alternative. Again, it depends on everybody's specific situation. Everybody should look into it and consider it. But again, it's not always an option for everybody. That's where it leads us to your other question, which was, what do you have to do to qualify yourself for Medicaid? If long-term care insurance is not an option, then you're going to look into Medicaid. And what can you do to qualify for Medicaid? It is as simple as it sounds. Medicaid is for the poor. You divest yourself of your assets. You give your assets away, whether it be into a trust or whether it be gifting outright, meaning just giving it away to whoever you choose to. It doesn't matter if family members or not. If it's considered an uncompensated transfer, it's a gift. So as you give everything away, as you would when you passed away in your estate, you do it before you pass away, obviously. In this way, you're gifting everything away, and you lower your resources down to the point where you become eligible.
Boy, so many questions to ask you. First, go ahead.
No, the amount that you could have and be eligible. I guess that would be the next logical question to ask, which would be $4,200 for nursing home care.
Say that. Say that again.
You have to divest yourself of assets so that you have no more than $4,200
left in your total package.
Right, but that doesn't include income, though. Again, it's a kind of a detailed discussion, as you indicated, and you're right.
Right. Yeah.
There's income limitations as well, and you can have an income stream because nobody's going to live off solely $4,200, and they don't want to get on Medicaid before they go into a nursing home.
The government doesn't want that either.
No, of course not. So what they would do then is set up some sort of an account, trust, for instance, where they can receive an income stream while still maintaining a small amount of resources.
Is there a number of years that one needs to divest himself or herself of their assets that, what do you want to call this, a deductible of years, the amount of time because it's easy if all of a sudden that family gets around and says, gee, we're going to have to put mama inside a nursing home and mama's worth $50 million. And they say, you know what, next Thursday we're going to gift everything away to all this, to this, to this, and she'd be left with $4,200. You're telling me won't work.
No, it won't work.
Okay, explain, because there's a time element, I assume.
Absolutely, yes.
Explain the time element, please.
Well, again, as I mentioned before, it's not a system that's going to work well for the wealthy. However, if you did take that example to someone who had maybe $2 million worth of assets, even if they tried to institute that type of plan, well, okay, she's going to need nursing home care next week or next month, start divesting yourself of all those assets, what's going to happen is you're going to be assessed a penalty. Okay. Now, there's a penalty by Medicaid. When you file your application, they're going to determine what the penalty is. So if you divest yourself of assets within a 5-year period, and again, there's some specifics regarding that because there was a new law passed on February 8, 2006. But without going into the specific details of that, basically you have a 5-year period. So if you divest your assets and one year goes by and you want to apply for Medicaid, you're going to be caught up in that 5-year period. So the 5-year period is called a look-back period. The look-back period works as a net. So anything that you divest within that 5-year period gets caught in the net. By getting caught in the net, it then becomes evaluated for a penalty.
Am I correct in stating that if you did it the first year, it'll be X dollars penalty? If you do it the second year, end of the second year, it's going to be a little less. If you end of the third, it's going to be a little less. And the fourth, that kind of a thing?
That's very intuitive, but not correct. Because the new law has changed that. And the penalty will be the same. If you divest yourself of assets, 4 years go by and you almost made it out of that net. You
need nursing care.
Yeah, let's say you almost made it out of the net. The 5-year period's almost gone. You have 4.5 years. They're going to look at that amount that you divest yourself as the same as they would if you did it a month before.
Really?
So it doesn't matter. As long as you're in that net, you're going to be assessed.
Is this a federal or a state governance? Who's administering this?
It goes federal and state.
Really?
Yeah. So basically, what's going to happen is you're going to be assessed, meaning it's going to be determined what the penalty period is going to be. And a very simple example is if you gave away $100,000, let's just say in the third year or the fourth year or right before the fifth year ended or a day before you applied, it doesn't matter, for nursing home care I'm talking about.
Right.
If you divest yourself $100,000, gave a gift to your son, your daughter, your grandchildren, whatever, dog, if you wish, absolutely, you're going to be assessed by applying the nursing home rate, which is, as I stated before, $10,000, a very round number.
Yeah.
Yes. And you divide that into the amount that you divest yourself of.
Right.
10 into 100 goes 10 times. So you will be ineligible for Medicaid for a 10-month period. So you will be responsible to
make up that 10 months on your own.
Exactly. And then after that 10 months runs, Medicaid will go ahead and pick up, because at that point they'll consider you to be at the Medicaid level where you can receive reimbursement for your nursing home care.
Do people, no, stupid question. Of course they do. How do people plan for the potential eventuality, if that's a right way of phrasing it,
right,
of needing this kind of nursing care help? And looking to make sure that they're financially able to manage it. I mean, is there a way, can somebody come to you and say to you, Steve, I'd like you to help me out here. I mean, help my mama, she's getting older. What can we do? So what do you do? Do you say, let me see what her net value is, let's see this and that, and find out from the doctor how she's doing?
Yeah, all those factors come into play. I mean, first of all, we'll ask what the net value is in order to determine whether or not Medicaid planning is going to be an option at all. If we determine that it is, there's always the option of long-term care insurance. And we always encourage people to check out that as a possibility. Now, again, if the premiums are too high, you can't afford it, it's off the table. And then we start talking about Medicaid planning. And we start talking about divesting yourself of assets. And the sooner you do that, the better. Because if you divest yourself of assets and 5 years does go by, then Medicaid will not want to know about it when it's time to go into the nursing home. So the sooner you plan in this way, the better off you are. And there's different investments. Of course, that's why we involve financial planners at our firm as well as accountants to be able to determine all the consequences for those divestitures, not simply just giving away, but where can you put it to make the best use of it for not only yourself, but for your children and anybody else that you may want to help.
I'm asking you a question that I can't hold you to because it's too broad. What is a reasonable number of premium that, say, you can give me the age. You want to say 55, you want to say 60, I don't care. You just give me an age. And what is a reasonable number? Would you say a reasonable number, is it like $3,000, $5,000 a year, or is it a monthly premium that you got to pay out?
Well, you're right. You can't. I'm glad you're not going to hold me to that, because
I know you can't. But you can give me a very broad range. Is $3,000 a year reasonable for, say, 50-year-old individual who's relatively healthy?
It absolutely could be. But again,
a year, not a month.
Right. You're going to
not a month.
Right. But you're going to get your premiums, and it's going to depend, again, like you said, on your health and your age. It's going to depend on your assets. It's going to depend on what you're comfortable with paying, and it's going to depend on the policy.
Right.
We don't do long-term care insurance. Other firms do, not attorneys, that you go to someone who sells long-term care insurance.
Right.
Okay. So you go to them, and you will look at a policy. And what I recommend that people do is I always say, go ahead and check it out. It's an option. We're not going to make any money on it, but I want you to check it out because it is an option for you.
Right.
Once you do that, you get a policy. I'll tell you to bring the policy into the office because I will take a look at it with you and maybe point out some things that only a third party may spot.
Right.
Things that you may not know.
See, it's occurring to me from this conversation, if you're an individual who's not wealthy, over $2 million, but you're not impoverished either, and you've got money set aside, certainly not enough to keep you in a nursing home indefinitely.
Right.
It probably does make sense to spend the $3,000 or $5,000 a year if we use those numbers.
Sure.
If they're somewhat reasonable numbers to use, I guess.
Absolutely.
And if you're looking at someone who is, say, 55 years old and say they need it when they're 80, So that's 25 years. And if they're spending, say, $5,000 a year times 25 years, what does that come to? $125,000?
Yes.
So you spent $125,000 in premiums all through those years, but now you're going to get hit with $20,000 a month because we're talking today.
Right.
We're not talking 25 years from now.
Right.
So it may very well, and to have those numbers might make a lot of good sense, even though at the time it sounds like an expensive piece of change to pay out. It's probably chicken feed in comparison to what you're going to get hit with.
Right, and there's charts out there too that show. I mean, after you put in payments,
actuarial type things.
Well, you put in payments for 20 years, and you're going to see how quickly you get that back. But again, I'm not here to try and sell long-term care insurance. I'm just here to say that it's a option that should be considered. And yeah, it depends on how many assets you have and what your income stream is. And as far as the inflation goes, like I said, you can always get a policy that will have an inflation rider. So when those nursing home costs do go up, that will be figured into that.
Okay, let's move on to another topic, another area. Now, what about transferring your assets? Can you do that?
Transferring your assets?
Right.
Absolutely. Sure.
So I mean, we really touched on it, transferring the assets as far as qualifying for Medicaid.
Right.
So okay, so we really addressed all that, but the next topic though really has to do with married people.
Okay.
How does being married affect all of this with assets and qualifying for Medicaid?
Well, a lot of people don't realize that you can transfer all your assets to your spouse. Okay. Now you can do that, but there are other income and resource amounts that will have to be qualified by the spouse as well. So you could transfer it to your spouse, but your spouse is also going to have a limited amount of resources to work with as well as an income stream. So there's certain numbers that the government is going to hold your spouse to, because basically the idea is that your spouse is responsible for you. So they're going to say that you have to pay for the expenses up to a certain amount.
So 6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
Right. Well, in New York, fortunately, there is something called a spousal refusal, because what happens a lot of times is middle-class people, which is what we normally deal with, or middle-class people, is that the spouse is unable to provide that type of care for their spouse.
Right.
Because, again, $10,000 plus maybe a mortgage, maybe car payments, and
everything
else.
It's insane.
Right. So what you could do is called a spousal refusal. You could basically say you're going to file with your Medicaid application and say that, in essence, I refuse to support my spouse, not because I don't want to, but because I can't continue living in the community when he's in a nursing home on the fixed amount of income that you're going to allow me to keep. So New York does honor those. And
what happens? So they honor it, and then what do they say? What's the sequelae? What's the outcome of saying spousal refusal, and then they honor it? Well, which means what now? That Medicaid will then jump in?
Exactly. Will then jump in. And now the good thing about this, and it's a double-edged sword here, because of the fact that the government can go after the spouse legally and sue the spouse for the amount that they are requesting be covered for the nursing home costs. So the spousal refusal can be filed. Medicaid will pick it up. But then they can be sued. They could be sued for the money. That sounds terrible. But worst case scenario, what ends up happening is that they'll be charged, and they'll say, well, you have to pay this back to Medicaid. But the good thing is that Medicaid has a lower rate of reimbursement than private pay does. So if you paid out of your pocket, you would pay more than Medicaid is paying.
I see what you're saying.
So you'll actually have to reimburse possibly.
But at a lower rate.
But at a lower rate. And I'm not saying that every spousal refusal is challenged. It is not. But it does happen.
You know, I've heard family members, my mom especially, say, I will never go to a nursing home. This is what you do for a living. You listen to people all day long. I'm sure you hear this.
Absolutely.
What happens in that case? They need care. But they're not going to go to a nursing home. They said, leave me alone. I'm not going to the nursing home. No, they'll kill me there. All right? So does the state get involved with this? I mean the government. Does Medicaid get involved with this at all? How does that work?
Well, as
far as... Or are they
as...
stuck?
No, well, as far as not wanting to go in, that's understandable. A lot of people do have fears of entering into a nursing home.
Right.
But the good news is that there are a lot of other services available to help people that need care, but maybe not to the level of a nursing home, okay? Because a lot of people don't want to simply say, my choices are two. Either I stay home by myself and can't take care of myself, or I go into a nursing home. And what is available is home care. So home care is a bridge to nursing home care, and maybe all the person ever needs. Simply help with activities of daily living. You could actually get somebody in to care for that person at home, as opposed to going into a nursing home. Now, a nursing home is necessary when you have medical issues and other things like this.
Right.
But as far as someone who is somewhat disabled but able to live on their own with help, there's help available to them as well without a nursing home.
Through Medicaid?
Yes.
Through Medicaid.
Yes. And
okay.
the rules are slightly different and quite a bit more liberal for home care as opposed to nursing home care.
Well, that's very interesting. So they want you to stay at home.
Right, and basically it's all the same rules as far as you got to divest yourself of your assets, otherwise you're not going to qualify for Medicaid. But what you could do is be eligible a month later, so it's different. You don't have to worry about that penalty period. You divest
5 years,
yourself,
right.
exactly, 5
Right.
years plus the penalty period.
Right.
Divest yourself, and the first day of the next month, you can be eligible for your home care services.
Well, a couple of things I'm getting from this. We only got about 3 minutes left.
Okay.
It's amazing how fast the
That
time's
did go
going.
very
Like,
fast.
it's amazing.
Yes.
When is a good time for someone to start planning for this? Number one, and number two, it is key that you need an individual needs to sit down with an elder care attorney. You can't do this alone.
Right.
You'll get in big trouble.
That's right.
When is a good time for someone? I mean, you got people watching the show who are 30, 40, 50, 60, when is a good time? When does one know?
Well, I have to tell you, a good time to consult with an elder law attorney
Right.
or a trust and estates attorney. Of course, if you're 30 years old, you're not looking for an elder law attorney.
Right.
But planning for your estate is a good idea at 30 because there's certain things that everybody should do, which
Right.
are advanced directives, power of attorney, health care proxy, very important, living will. For the elderly or those who are planning on becoming elderly sometime soon with the grace of God, they should go to an elder law attorney when they are basically looking at themselves and saying, it's about time to retire. That's when you start having assets out there that will be income producing. And that's when it's time to start thinking about getting things out of your name and into trusts and start to plan for the possibility of nursing home care. And what I strongly suggest that people do is to meet with an attorney about these issues. For the younger people, trust and estates, and for the older people, for the elder law attorney, because of the fact that you don't want these piecemeal approaches. There's a lot of things out there. You can go on the internet and you can go ahead and pull off this document. It's so easy. We can go ahead and do a living will, just type in. The problem is when you do that, if you even get a good document, which sometimes they're out there, but you have to have all these other considerations which surround that. If you get a healthcare proxy, wonderful, but what about a DNR? And what about
Don't
a
give me
living will?
DNR, give me language.
Do not
Speak.
resuscitate.
Okay.
Okay. And a living will as well, which is going to state specifically what type of treatment you want or don't want when you're in an incapacitated state. A power of attorney. You need to consider assets, transferring assets. So what I'm trying to say is that you got to look at the whole package, not piecemeals. And that's why you need to meet with an elder law attorney or a trust and estate attorney to help you bring it all together and develop a plan that's going to work for you and for your family. Because ultimately, this is what we're talking about. It's to help you, and it's also to help your family, the people who are going to benefit from all the hard work that you put into your life.
It can be gone in a flash.
Exactly.
Be gone in a flash. I got a lot out of this discussion today. I mean, you really filled in a lot of good information. And if anyone watching this show walks away with anything, they walk away with knowing, I better do some planning. And I better not be emotional about this. I better be factual about it and look what's in my best interest and get someone who is a specialist in this field, because an individual can't do this. I mean, you know, Uncle Mo can't sit down and do this with Gertrude on their own and go on the internet and look up things or have their cousin handle this for them, because they'll get in deep trouble.
Right, exactly.
And everything will be gone.
Yes.
Incredible. The other thing I got out of the show is I should go out and invest in some nursing homes.
Absolutely. I'll be a co-investor with you on that.
Unbelievable. Steve Razor.
All right.
It's a pleasure. We're out of time.
Thank you very
Went
much.
by fast, didn't it?
It absolutely did. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, I appreciate your time and your expertise. Will you come back again
I'd
to
love
address other issues?
I would love to do that.
Terrific.
Okay.
You're good, you're knowledgeable, you're articulate. Appreciate it. It was terrific.
Thank you very much.
I hope that you got a lot out of it, and I hope you'll do something for yourself. Don't just sit there. Help yourself. Very important, because the time's going to go by and you're going to say, why didn't I listen to Dr. Passes when he spoke with Steve Razor? Okay, so we'll see you again next time. Dr. Passes saying, whatever you do it with passion. Think about this and do it with passion. Get it done. Until then, see you next time.